Hey guys, welcome to part one of a special series I'm going to be doing of Awesome Build, where I focus on the props and some of the set pieces that I built for the Nostalgia Critic Mad Max Fury Road review. To date, the Mad Max review that we did was the largest amount of props, costumes, and set pieces that we've had to build for a single review. It was a ton of work, but it was also a lot of fun. I was probably going to build a lot of the props that we used anyway. So it was a cool excuse and a good exercise for me to delve into and build those props. And fortunately, we also had more time on that particular review to focus on building some of the props and the costumes and stuff. So in this first episode, I'm going to be focusing on the first prop that I built for that review, which for me kind of set the tone, how I wanted to build the props and stuff. It was a prop that I've been wanting to build for a long time, even before the movie came out and stuff, so it just gave me an excuse to kind of delve right into it. And that prop is Mad Max's shotgun. This prop was primarily used by Tamara, who was playing Furiosa during the review. Yeah, so I've compiled some of the behind-the-scenes footage of some of the elements I used in the process that I put it together. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this first installment. So I started with a piece of conduit that I cut into two 12-inch lengths, as you can see there. I think I used 3/4 inch, and then I've got two pieces of square tubing. One's brass, one's aluminum. It's basically just what I had, so I used the smaller piece to create a spacer between the two pieces of conduit, and I glued it using JB Weld, or I think I used JB Quick, which just activates a little faster, but it's a really good adhesive for adhering metals. So this is the two pieces combined, and then once that was cured, I added a piece of epoxy putty, a little plumber's epoxy putty, and set the larger square tubing on top of that to kind of get it to where I wanted it, make sure it was flat and it was even all the way across, so that then I could fill in that gap between the square tubing and the conduit with more JB Weld. It's a two-part epoxy that you can you mix up, you lay it in, pour it in, brush it in, however you want, and then you've got some time you can kind of smooth it out, which is what I did there. And you can kind of see there's some bubbles and stuff. I think I had to do two or three coats or whatever to kind of would settle in, and then I would put another thin bead, kind of smooth it out. But yeah, then once that cures, I cut out the handle and all like the wood pieces, the handle itself, and then the forward grip, and cut it out of a piece of 2x4 and just sanded the hell out of it. So, and then the brake mechanism, the hinge piece, I just took a piece of scrap aluminum that I had, of aluminum flat bar, and a metal spacer that I had that was about the right size that I was looking for. I had a few different ones, and I shot a screw through it into the spacer and held it there with epoxy putty, and that's basically what you see there. And then I covered the screw head with the epoxy putty so it wouldn't shift around or loosen or anything. And that notch in there, that groove, really serves no purpose. It was just a scrap piece, so but you're never going to see it, so it didn't really matter to me. I then decided how I wanted to use the body of the gun. I once I got the shape that I was looking for, I traced it onto the wood, and then I cut it into, I cut two identical pieces, and a centerpiece, as you can see here. And then the centerpiece is the one that's got sort of rounded out notch kind of there. And I pre-drilled all my holes so I knew everything would line up correctly. Got my holes there. That's going to drill into the handle. And then that's the centerpiece, and that's where my locking pin is going to slide through. And you can see it's kind of effed up. I didn't do a very good job there. So, yeah. Here I'm just assembling the pieces, kind of see how they all go, and where that spacer is going to fit there to create sort of the hinge, the break. So there's my finished handle after a lot of sanding. And I drilled a hole and created a notch in the top there, and that's where my pin is going to go for the locking mechanism. And that's my pin, which is just a sliding bolt for like a sliding latch or sliding lock. And I just modified it by cutting it down and then adding some plumber's epoxy putty for that little kind of like thumb end there. And then here I'm just screwing together the body of the gun, as you can see, and then I have to cut off the end pieces. But kind of just testing it out. I wanted to put all the pieces together and make sure that everything fit before, just in case I had to rebuild anything or anything like that. So there's the spring, and that's going to go inside the handle like that, behind the pin, and then the pin slides in like that, and that's going to be my locking mechanism. Lock and release for the break of the gun. That slides through the hole there. And then screw it to the handle. And then this is the barrel where I have now added the some screws for the forward grip, and there's my brake mechanism. So I used the JB Weld and glued that piece of aluminum to the conduit, and then my spacer there is going to fit into the body of the gun. Yeah, I put some epoxy putty for those screws, but it wasn't really strong enough, so I also had to add some JB Quick. And there's the forward grip that I sanded out of the same 2x4, I think, that I sanded the handle out of. And again, it was a lot of sanding. But yeah, pre-drilled my holes, screwed in. I kind of designed the whole thing so that I could break it apart like a real gun. I could take all the elements apart in case something broke, and I could replace just that one part instead of having to scrap it or rebuild the whole thing. So this is me kind of testing out the brake mechanism, make sure it's going to work before I cut the screws down and paint everything up. But yeah, that's kind of that's how it swivels. Does lock in pretty good, so we're good to go. So at this point now, I'm going to attach the forward grip, and that piece that I added there is going to fit around the curve of the body of the gun so that when it breaks, it doesn't swing like all the way down. It kind of swings down and stops, very much like a real shotgun. Just add my screws, screw it to the body, and then I added a trigger guard using a piece of aluminum that I bent into a trigger guard, and then the triggers are just, they don't activate or anything, or there's no springs. They're just pieces of plastic that I cut into triggers and drilled a hole and put a pin through it. So they're basically just there. They kind of move, but they don't really do anything. And that's pretty much the finished elements before painting. All right, so I've been working on this project a little bit here, a little bit there for the past few weeks as I've been working on other projects and stuff. So what I've come up with is this. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm gonna add some things to it. If I need to, I can kind of repair it. But I need it actually for a project that I'm working on currently. Yeah, so this is it. It's pretty much done. Probably the thing that I'm most disappointed with is the brake mechanism. I wanted to do it more like the real thing, where you kind of flip it to the side, and there's a catch underneath that'll break the barrel. But unfortunately, that was going to take a little more time, and because I constructed the housing out of wood, it was kind of brittle. So when I started to construct it, one of the pieces already cracked. So I just scrapped it, I rebuilt the centerpiece, and then I just put the pin in with the spring. So you could just pull it back and snap it shut like that. And then I've got these toy shotgun shells that came with a toy shotgun. And they fit actually perfectly into the barrel. And then you can still close it, and you've got your cool loading and unloading kind of process. Also, I just sculpted these pieces for the back of the barrel that holds the shell. That's just sculpted out of plumber's epoxy putty. And yeah, once I paint it all the same color and stuff, it should blend in pretty well. But that's it. So yeah, we'll paint it up, and then by the end of the day, hopefully we'll have a pretty cool looking Mad Max prop shotgun. So. All right, so after a quick paint job, we're pretty much all done. It came out pretty decently. Looks like the Mad Max's shotgun, enough to where if you wanted to make one for a cosplay, or if you just want to display it on your wall next to your Mad Max DVDs or something, I think it'd probably be a pretty cool showpiece. You wouldn't have to go into as much detail as far as the working mechanism if you wanted. You could just display it. You wouldn't have to make the brake mechanism or anything like that. But for the paint job, I used two different colored brown paints. I used Krylon Color Master. This was brown boots, satin, and I used red oxide. And the two of them kind of combined make a pretty decent looking worn wood kind of texture. First I did the light coat. Usually I do it darker and I work lighter. This time I actually did the lighter brown over the whole thing, and then I just touched up the edges with the red oxide to kind of mirror the effect that when you're handling a gun that's been stained or wood or whatever, then the oils in your hands are going to wear away the finish on the gun. So you're going to have a lighter kind of finish on like the handle or the places where like your hands are going. The barrel I primed in black, And then all these pieces are just black primer. And then I went over it again with gunmetal gray. So this is only the first episode in this series. I'm gonna have a bunch, and they're all for mainly one production. I've been wanting to build this for a long time. This just sort of gave me the excuse, and it was a nice kind of starting point for now moving forward and doing a bunch of props for the Mad Max review. So thanks a lot.